point out, for those of us joining us this morning, that we are live at the Wilson Theater in Rupert. And we'd like to thank the folks here, of course, for providing this venue today. This is our Memorial Day event. In advance of Memorial Day, because there's a lot we have to tell you that's going on going on this weekend. I just want to make a quick note too, while we're still in the music here. I was telling folks yesterday that there's some big lottery jackpots out there right now. If you happen to be lucky enough to win one of those, I told the theater, by the way, I'm buying them a projector if I hit. And then I can come over and watch movies all the time. But I was saying, if you end up getting a big windfall in life, you might want to think about finding someone to help you plan on how you're going to put that away and how you're going to manage it. And I wanted to recommend Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls. They've been around since 1937, and one of the oldest firms offering mutual funds. And in fact, Waddell & Reed owns and manages 2 mutual fund families. And do they know what they're doing? Well, 80 years in business is a pretty good record. And they'll take a planning approach, and they'll look at each piece of the puzzle for clients, recognizing that you have individual needs and goals. And they'll build proper expectations. Waddell & Reed will help you manage the money. And at Waddell & Reed, they take planning personally. I'm joined on the stage right now by a couple of men who, they are combat veterans. And they are the combat veterans, members of the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association. And they're joining us today. A couple of things to point out is that they are essentially an honor guard when we have one of the fallen come home, but they do an annual Memorial Day weekend event. First of all, I wanted to mention JR is joining us. JR, you can just sidle up to the microphone. Welcome. Let me make sure that microphone is up and running. Try that again for me.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I want to point out JR's microphone is giving me a little bit of frustration here at the moment. So what I may do then is we'll just pass mine around while we're doing this morning. And you also brought along George Mass, right?
Yes.
And George is joining us this morning as well. I wanted to point out that the two of you are here to, at least we're going to have you back in the next hour, but you wanted to address a little bit. Well, actually, we'll start then with George. This is the 3rd annual Idaho Roll Call Memorial Ride. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yes, if I may go back to the history on how this monument started. In 2012, I had the honor of help escorting Chris Workman home. People was lined up for miles, and about 3 weeks later, everything's back to normal, and I thought, we just laid a soldier to rest, and everybody goes about, and there's nothing to remind them that we had lost one of our comrades. So I designed the Idaho Roll Call Monument. I approached the city council with it, and they approved it to fly the flag at half-staff, so we put it in. Worked very closely with John and Anna Workman, Chris's parents, to make sure that everything was proper protocol on the flag and also prestigious where we don't offend nobody. We put it in through the flag at half-staff. Somebody complained about the flag at half-staff. This election year, the governor pulled a proclamation, and that bothered me, so I got with Senator Dean Cameron, and he passed a bill through Idaho legislature, S-1155, to give the governor authority to fly the flag at half-staff.
And now permanently, right?
It is permanently. There's only 2 places in the United States that flies it 24/7, 365 days. One's Comfort, Texas. They honor 29 that was killed during the Civil War, and then one I have here in Rupert, and it pays tribute to all fallen soldiers in Idaho.
I was going to say, it sounds like the political challenge initially probably, well, first of all, I don't know why anyone would have any complaint about it, but the political challenge initially was easily overcome. And I'd like to think it's because we think sometimes that politicians are just opportunists and that they're doing this simply because, they know that they're going to pick up a few votes. But I get the impression that a lot of them are just as touched by these stories as they're human beings too.
It is. Senator Cameron was awesome on supporting the veterans. He got a new position. We got Senator Kelly Anthon. He supports veterans 110%. Anything that we do to pay tribute to our fallen or to veterans, he's on it 110%. If I may add, with Senator Anthon and my grandson Adam Fowler, he's 11 years old at the time. When I come back from Boise testifying to get the flag at half-staff, Adam's his grandpa said, we need to get the flag at half-staff. I said, no, we don't. I said, you are not half-staff. Get flag education back into school. I said, no, I don't. No, we don't. I said, you do. And he wrote a letter to Senator Anthony. Senator Anthony took that to task. He went to Boise and summons my grandson up to testify. And he testified for the Education Board, and they not only got flag education back into school, but they have to pass a citizenship test before they graduate high school now.
You know, when you mention that, it's the parents and grandparents, though, in many ways, since around the country so few schools delve into this, it's the parents and grandparents who really now have become those first teachers when it comes to the meaning of what that flag is and what the country means.
It is, I agree. And, you know, we've got a lot of young teachers. They're good in the profession, but they don't have any military or veteran background. You know, they're in that era between the wars and what have you. And so we've got to educate the teachers along with the students.
I wanted to point out we're joined by George Mass and JR, and they are here speaking this morning about some of their efforts. And we'll actually talk a little bit about the Idaho Roll Call Memorial Ride following the break. We're almost 8:30 already. It's hard to believe, but I do want to point out as well, Major Priscilla Giddings is going to be joining us. She will be along at about 8:40 this morning. She is a combat veteran, a pilot actually. She's flown A-10s as well as some other, she's been involved in some air combat throughout her life. And now she's serving as a state representative in the Idaho legislature. She's going to be joining us, as I say, in about 10 minutes. And then coming up in the next hour, we're going to spend the first few minutes after 9 o'clock talking about a project in the Pocatello area that really speaks to the heart. That's on the way. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. To go here. Hey, I want to thank people for tuning in and joining us this morning. We are live. We're at the Wilson Theater in Rupert, Idaho, and this is our Memorial Day preview show. I have mentioned that the theater was gracious enough to donate this space for our program today, and this beautiful theater. I got a history tour a little earlier, and it's amazing to see something like this in the center of a small city in Idaho. This is world class. Also wanted to point out, of course, the Sergeant Chris Workman Scholarship Fund helping out with sponsorship of our program today, as well as our friends at Ramsey Heating and Electric, who are very much involved in causes involving our fighting men and women, and really just very patriotic people, as I understand, from friends who know them very, very well. As well as to point out, it's going to be 80 degrees today, and it looks like we've finally broken out of the month of March. Here we are in late May. That's probably a good thing. We wanted to point out, if you have not yet flipped on the air conditioning unit, you should test it out. It's been a long time, likely since it's been on, and you want to find out if it's working in tip-top shape. If it's not, give the folks at Ramsey Heating and Electric, I'll get that out, a telephone call today. The team at Ramsey's is going to make sure the job is done right the first time. And we wanted to point out the shop is located at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. You can telephone them at 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. George Mass and is it Mass or Boss? Which you like the Mass pronunciation?
Mass.
Yeah. Okay. You're not Roman Catholic, are you?
No.
Spelled differently, we should point out. And JR is joining us as well, and they are with the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association. And JR, you wanted to mention this event coming up this weekend.
Yes, sir. We're going to do a little motorcycle ride out through the country out here, visit a couple small cities, just pass through, and about a 75-mile ride, and we'll leave about 9:30 out of Blessed Ride motorcycle out here at Rupert, and then when we get back into Rupert, we'll get to the Roll Call Memorial, and we've got Senator Anson and some other people will be there. We're going to have a really nice ceremony. George Mast and his wife and mine will be serving food and stuff. It's always a good way to start Memorial Weekend, to come and honor the fallen and spend a couple hours.
It's an obligation, I guess, that you feel you still have to do.
Yes.
Doesn't go away.
No, it's one of those things. You know, we do what we can for the fallen. We do what we can for the ones that are still around that needs help. The combat veterans, our motto is vets helping vets. So anytime, anything, financial, moral, anything at all. We've done burial escorts for them, for people we don't know. It's just whatever we can do to help.
I was going to say, there's always the question of who's going to come after you and sort of carry this on.
Well, we've got some of our younger vets that's come back from Afghanistan and stuff, and my chapter's got, I would say, majority of them are Vietnam veterans, although we have the younger ones we're getting in, and hopefully that when we're not here to do it, that somebody else takes over and keeps going.
I'd like to think that the day will come. Obviously, there was always, I remember meeting the national commander of the American Legion about 30 years ago, and he was telling me at the time, he said, the goal is to someday not have us exist. I mean, that's the idea, is that there will be no more wars. But it looks like we're still a long way off from that happening.
I think as long as there's evil people in the world, there'll be wars. We'll lose our men and women, and there's plenty of evil people. And
that's going to require people along the lines of your organization to be out there with this duty that you have when these people come home.
Absolutely.
I wanted to point out, for people who'd like to know more about the organization, and you mentioned you've got some younger members, but if some people are listening today and they've come back from war and they like motorcycles, they want to get involved, what would you recommend they do?
Well, they can get a hold of, they can go on, actually on the website, there's combat veterans. They can go on there and get some information. They can find one of our members and get information. Ours is one of those that there's a yearly dues and 500cc restriction on a motorcycle, and you have to be in harm's way in order to become a combat veteran, but we welcome them all.
I wanted to mention as well that one other way they could find out a little bit more is come see what you're doing this weekend.
Absolutely. Come and see.
I want to thank you both for joining us, and I just wanted to point out, too, in keeping with what's going on today, we're going to be joined in a few minutes by a combat pilot. She'll be joining us all the way from Whitebird, which means she's not here in the theater with us because that's a bit of a hike. But Major Priscilla Giddings is a combat veteran. She's a pilot. She's currently serving I believe with a reserve unit, but she spent nearly 10 years on active duty. And I asked her the other day if she'd be running for office beyond the state legislature because there's a congressional seat open where she lives, and she said no. She said, I wouldn't be able to see my beautiful house. So she lives in a lovely valley, and so I understand where she's coming from on that. But I want to thank both George and JR for joining us, and we'll have a chance to talk again in the next hour. Looking forward to that. And in the meantime, a short break. I'd give you the temperature right now, but it's nice and cool inside the theater, and I don't really have any idea of what it is, but I'm sure it's nice wherever you are. We're on our way to 80 degrees today. And we wanted to point out we are live at the Wilson Theater in Rupert, Idaho today, and this is in advance. And I'm going to give you a correction in the next hour, thanks to Anna Workman, who's my producer today. She's giving me a very nice look back from the audience. I thank you, because most women don't look at me that way. But I wanted to point, she's. I just want to say thank you, and I'll get to the clarification in a few minutes. But I do want to point out we have a guest joining us in just a moment. In the meantime, I wanted to remind people who are tuning in today, since we're actually here in Rupert, we're not very far away from Mount Harrison Audiology. If you have difficulty with your hearing health, feel free to call Mount Harrison Audiology. And there are a lot of choices, but we've been telling you there's a reason you should call Mount Harrison Audiology first. That is experience. Dr. Christine Pickup is a certified audiologist with 17 years serving the hearing impaired of all ages. True diagnostic testing is going to help you to know what the causes of your hearing loss are and will lead to the best treatment options. Trust your hearing to a certified audiologist. Call Mount Harrison Audiology for your appointment today, 208-312-0957. Joined by a guest today. She is joining us today in a role that is a little different than her role the previous time she's been on the program. She serves in the Idaho State Legislature, but prior to that was an experienced combat pilot in the United States Air Force and is now serving in a reserve capacity. Major Priscilla Giddings joining us this morning. Welcome back to our show.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here with you.
I wanted to just off the top, tell you something I was thinking about the other day when we were mentioning the fact you were going to be on the program, and that is, I remember talking to veterans from World War II on up through every war since then, and they would share with me all the time if someone had been actually in infantry or artillery and they'd been on the ground, they would tell me, they said, we had it easy. Those people up in the sky had it tough. And then if I talked to the pilots and the other folks who were on the planes as well at war and the jets later, they would always say to me, no, we had it easy. Those people on the ground had it more difficult. So it's from that perspective, everybody understands that no matter what your role is, you're part of that vital mission, right?
Absolutely. It's a team fight, and I think we all share that heart of patriotism. We all love America.
I was going to say, your own experience is not necessarily unique, but you were the top student right in your class in high school, and then you went on to the Air Force Academy. Did you have this in mind from the time you were a kid, that you were going to take this role in your life, or was this something you felt compelled to do at some point?
Oh, it was definitely something I was called to do. I think I was about 10 years old when I decided that I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy and become an officer and serve our great nation. And I wouldn't have changed any part of it. It's a great honor.
Now, the role being at one time an A-10 pilot is not easy because it's close support to the ground. You're the type of individual in that cockpit who has to have nerves of steel, I would imagine, because there are people close enough shooting back at you that you might not see if you were, let's say, in a B-52 flying a mission there.
Yeah, definitely nerves of steel for sure, but that's actually the beauty of our American military is we are trained constantly to handle those tough situations. I can remember one of my first flights learning to fly in formation. You're going, 350 miles per hour, literally 2 to 3 feet away from the tip of another airplane. And our instructors would always say, just wiggle your fingers and toes, wiggle your fingers and toes whenever you're nervous or you catch yourself not breathing. And because it kind of trains your mind. If you're thinking about wiggling your fingers and toes, then you're not letting your brain be quite as nervous, and you can focus on the mission. So we were trained very well. And, the A-10 is an incredible airplane. You always hear about the titanium bathtub that the pilot sits in that helps repel small arms fire, because we do have the mission of close air support, and that's the primary reason I loved flying the A-10 is because that the guys on the ground, they love to hear the A-10 coming up over the side of a mountain, has a kind of a quiet whistling noise. And when they hear that sound, they just have smiles on their faces, and you can hear it through the radio. And it is about supporting those guys on the ground. And you're so focused on helping them because they're a lot closer to the bullets than you are in a plane. So it's all about helping the guys on the ground for sure.
Our guest is the Major Priscilla Giddings, and she's joining us this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We've got 55 in the Valley. Major, I was thinking as you were talking about what it's like to fly an A-10, my generation is very similar to that generation that lived between the two world wars. In other words, I had a grandfather. He was too young for World War I, and by the time World War II came along, they would have turned him away and said, "You're far too old for this conflict." My generation sort of fits that, but your generation is a somewhat younger generation. A great deal has been asked of all of you, and it's continuing to be asked of you. As we were just talking at the top of our program today, Manchester, England proves to us that we are far from out of the forest when it comes to this conflict that is really global. Is there ever a moment where any of you stand back and say, gosh, this is getting to the point where it's exhausting us. How much longer does this have to go on? Or is there just a resiliency that takes over?
Yeah, you were spot on. Such a unique war that we are on. Like you said, the war on terrorism is becoming a global fight. And just even when we were watching the news of the latest terrorism attack in England, and you're right, it is very tough on our soldiers. And I personally experienced just the morale was just plummeting. More specifically, in the last 3 to 5 years, and as money and funding for equipment and training was being pulled away, and we were told that we had too many people in the military, so they started forcing people out of the military. It just really it was really hard on the morale, and it's hard when you watch your friends die in Afghanistan, and great people like Sergeant Workman. I mean, he literally gave up his life for our freedoms here in America, and it's hard to watch your friends die like that. It really does affect your heart and your soul and your mind and our whole country. But I can also tell you that just in the last year, morale has improved greatly with our new commander-in-chief. My role as a reservist is to recruit potential new officers to go into the military, and our admissions or our request applications for new students out of high school was at an all-time low last year, leading up to the election. And since the election, we're back on normal numbers for recruiting, where people are now reviving in their spirit. There's definitely optimism. Now we have new funding. I think it's $15 billion that the military will get for training and supplies, and so there's a boost in morale and optimism, and I really am hopeful for our service members right now.
I think that sometimes it's just a direct message. I was listening to the president's remarks at the summit in Saudi Arabia the other day, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but when he said, you've got to drive them out of your houses of worship, you've got to drive them out of your countries, you have to drive them out of this earth. It was pretty obvious he was talking very bluntly, and we didn't even see that under President Bush, and we certainly didn't see it under President Obama. But does that give a shot of morale to our fighting men and women?
Absolutely. You would be surprised that every military member is listening to every single word their president and their commander-in-chief says. And I know that I was listening to every word that the president said as well. And it's the other things that stood out to me about what he said is he's providing a vision for our country that is giving our soldiers hope, because our soldiers are well trained and they want to get rid of terrorism, and they want to provide peace for our country and throughout the world to help people. But it's hard if you have a commander-in-chief who doesn't let you do your job. We found that a lot flying the A-10. I mean, here we can carry 16,000 pounds of bombs and put essentially a 2.5-pound bullet or grenade on any target, but we were somewhat handcuffed in what we were allowed to do. And now you have words from President Trump. I mean, I know that the two big things he said was he's going to make a global center for combating this extremist ideology, and then also making a financial targeting center to stop, to work on preventing countries from financing terrorism. And it's like, yes, like those are the great ideas that we need as a military to go in and start. Now we have something, a vision and something quantifiable that we can attack and achieve, and to get rid of terrorism in the world. And I think that does give our soldiers a lot of hope.
Our guest is Major Priscilla Giddings, and she's joining us from Whitebird. And as we pointed out, she's an air combat pilot and veteran of the United States Air Force. I curious to know where you're going to spend Memorial Day. Obviously, you have legislative duties too, I would assume, but because of that combined role you have in life, how do you spend Memorial Day or the Memorial Day weekend?
It is definitely a busy and fun weekend. It's a weekend when everybody is traveling and out camping. My role as a service member and also as a legislator, I'm asked and honored to participate in lots of different ceremonies throughout the state. I'm a lifetime member of the VFW and also a lifetime member of the American Legion and members of the post here in my area, District 7, up near Riggins, Grangeville area. So we have several cemetery ceremonies going on, and it's an honor to put on my uniform and guard the colors and to really honor those that gave their lives for the red, white, and blue. And each of those colors of our flag and the meaning of the flag, it has a lot of meaning to our country, and especially to the families who have lost loved ones. And so I will definitely be spending the weekend honoring our veterans and our those that have given their lives for our country. It's
coming up on 8:55. We have a couple minutes left with Major Priscilla Giddings, and she's joining us from Whitebird this morning. I have a thought on all of this. Is it for people who this is a weekend of great sadness that is coming up for many, many Americans? It is okay to be sad, though, isn't it? As long as we understand what that commitment and sacrifice was all about.
That's really tough, especially, for parents of Sergeant Chris Workman, his mom, Anna, and John Workman. I think it's really tough to be sad in their situation. It's really tough to lose your son. But at the same time, it's very, there's a lot of deep meaning behind what their son gave his life for our country, our way of life, the freedom, and those things. I think it is kind of a good sadness in that it can bring all of us together and realize that, hey, freedom is not free, and that our mission and vision of bringing goodness and peace throughout the world in this fight of good versus evil, it's not easy, and we do have to put up a fight. And so it is such an incredible honor that someone like Sergeant Workman would give up his life in the fight in good versus evil. And for that, I am very thankful. And so that is a good thing, that it shows people to be thankful for those who sacrifice.
I want to thank you for your time, and I'm glad you could join us. I know that we kind of put you on the spot a couple of weeks ago when we asked you to do this, and I know it would have been a long drive, but every time you're on the air with us, I get a tremendous email response. I won't put you on the spot politically about that open congressional seat today, but we'll have to do that another day.
Well, that would be fun. I'm sorry I couldn't be down there either. I think I need to get an airplane so that I can fly to all these events throughout our great state.
Yeah, you probably do that better than most of us drive.
Idaho's beautiful from the air, for sure.
Well, Major, thank you so much for your time. God bless and enjoy. But also, I'm gladdened that you're going to be honoring those who paid that last full measure of devotion.
Yes, and God bless all of you guys, too, and have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you very, very much. I want to thank Major Priscilla Giddings, and, of course, she's a state legislator as well here in Idaho, for joining us this morning. She serves in the Idaho House, and she is a combat veteran, pilot as well, having served in the U.S. Air Force. We have a short break for news coming up from the Fox Radio Network, and then in hour number 2 of the program, a lot more ahead. I do want to point out we have some guests joining us from the Pocatello area in the next segment of the show, talking about the Field of Heroes, and I'll share with you a clarification too on that in the next hour or two. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com.